Does mine look goofy?
Yeah,
No, it looks normal.
You look like you're flying a helicopter.
Oh, that's what I should look like. Okay. All right.
I'm Duane Urban, and welcome to the Urban Defense Podcast, featuring discussion on firearms, concealed carry, self-defense, the law, and much more. Designed to inform, educate, and increase your survival in a critical incident. This is Season 1, Episode 7, and the second video in our Survival Skills series. Welcome to the Urban Defense Podcast. I'm Duane Urban, and along with me, as always, is attorney Andrew Saller, managing partner of Saller, Lord, Ernstberger, and Inslee. And in today's episode, we'll be talking about what do you do once the shots have stopped after the threat has ceased. Our special guest tonight is Vincent Noto. Vinny is a local business owner. Thanks for being here tonight, Vinny.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on, Duane. Thank you, Andrew, as well.
And you own a security company in Maryland, do you not?
Yes.
You want to tell us a little bit about your company, what you do, and what you have to offer?
Okay, so I'm the president and co-founder of On-Site Protection. We've been in business since 2019. We basically offer a variety of security services ranging from armed to unarmed, retail, commercial, executive protection, large events, concerts, parties, wine festivals, you name it, we can secure it.
Who's the most famous person?
I want to say
Elton John.
No, I think my coolest picture to date would probably be the one with Shaq.
Where can I find that picture, Vinny?
It's on my actually on the company Instagram as well. That's On-Site Protection on IG as well as Facebook. Just all one word, no spaces.
Awesome. So, you know, on tonight's episode, we're going to be talking again about how to protect yourself once the shots have ceased. And Vinny's been involved in a critical incident or two, and we'll get to that. But, you know, guys, I think as it applies to self-defense planning and training, a lot of people concentrate only on the when and how, but don't think as much about the afterward component. And that's kind of a big deal. Like you can't have the one without the other, right?
Absolutely. First and foremost, you need to survive the encounter. But what's going to happen afterwards, that's where lawyers get involved and all the fun can start.
So let's say you've been involved in a critical incident. What are some things that you should consider right away? Well, I'll start it right off by saying scene safety. Is the scene safe, or do we still have an active and ongoing incident at the moment? So that would be ideally number one. And then moving from there, if the scene is in fact safe, getting the gun holstered. Any disagreement on that?
None whatsoever. My greatest concern for any of our lovely listeners who was involved in a critical force incident, that God forbid someone misconstrues that they're the bad guy and they become a casualty as well.
Right, because remember now, we're going to have responders showing up to the scene.
Yes.
We're going to have what else more of now than ever before, other concealed carry holders potentially with questionable training and skills, trying to help and not maybe aware of what's actually happening, maybe misinterpreting what they're seeing.
Well, it's actually funny that you mentioned that because right after my incident, as I was still trying to evaluate everything that just happened, take it all in, a kid actually came riding down the street on a dirt bike. So I was like, is he friend or foe? You know what I mean?
Right. You don't know.
Yeah, you just don't. I'm like, I mean, it's not like he was on a legit motorcycle. You know, it's 10:30 at night. And I'm like, well, were those two together? You know, those thoughts do go through your head.
Absolutely.
You're telling me there's not a law that there can only be one bad guy?
There isn't. But
Not yet.
It's like anything else. I mean, even if you've ever seen somebody like that's been in a physical, like just even a street fight or a fist fight, you know, that person comes up, a good person will come up behind them to try and grab them, and they turn around and punch them because they think that they're a bad guy. So,
yeah. So, you know, I actually taught a class not too long ago, and there was someone in the class that had been through some other instructor's class for some other reason, and I don't know how they found their way to me, but nonetheless, they did. And one of the things that their instructor, quote unquote, had told them was after you fire the shots, you should immediately set the gun down on the ground in front of you and walk back away from it. Andrew, your thoughts on that?
That sounds very risky, very risky, tactically, very risky legally. Oh my God almighty. I don't even know where to start with that.
Maintain control. Yeah. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, though. This is the stuff that I've heard in the years that I've been doing this. And as we go through the podcast more and more, I'm sure we'll talk more about it. But, I'm hearing that and I'm like, why would anyone do that?
It's astounding. And I can only imagine, God forbid, what if something terrible happens from there? And then I'm in court trying to explain, yeah, we were in control of the situation, but then we put our gun on the ground unprompted.
Right. And somebody else grabbed it and did something with it, or
stole
God
it.
forbid, yeah, God forbid another threat appeared and you didn't have it with you to take action. So, okay. So is the scene safe? If so, let's get that gun holstered. Now, calling 911, you're going to need to call for help. So most dispatch in this region within the big counties use something called emergency police dispatch and or emergency medical dispatch and probably emergency fire dispatch as well. And that is a scripted series of questions that they will not deviate from. They're going to ask you a series of questions, and they're going to need to get those answers before they move on. Now, with that said, you do not need to get to the end of the phone call before police are coming. They are dispatching while you are answering their questions. The first thing you're likely to hear is going to be, what's the location of the emergency? And that is the most critical thing that they need to know. Once they know the location that the help needs to go to, they can start getting it sent there, but they can't send anything if they don't know where it needs to go. So they're going to ask you that, and then they're going to ask you to repeat that to make sure they have it right. The next thing they're going to ask you is, what is the phone number you're calling from in case we get disconnected? That's going to be important as well for obvious reasons, and they're going to ask you to repeat that. After that, they're going to say, okay, tell me exactly what happened. In that situation, you're going to say something to the effect of, I'm a concealed carry holder. I've been involved in a shooting. I need police and paramedics to come to the scene. Something to that effect. Agreement, disagreement.
I would keep it brief, to the point. Let's not lock ourselves into details that may not be completely accurate when you're in the panic of the moment.
Yes. So we're not going to give specifics about the incident. We're not going to say anything incriminating, because you can't call 911 and they say, okay, what happened? And go, well, I'd rather not say.
It doesn't work. Surprise.
You've got to say something. So I think that's a pretty safe middle ground. And once you've done that, that's going to lead them down another series of questions that are essentially going to be, are you still in danger? Are there still suspects? And are they armed? We don't want to go into too great of detail and editorialize, right, Andrew?
Absolutely. There's no need to just be adding superfluous information. You're probably going to be in a heightened adrenaline state. You may say things that you perceive to be true, but they may be inaccurate. You may be very excited due to this incident and will begin saying unkind things about the person that you may have shot. Those all might be true, but there's no need to share those with other people at this time.
Right. And remember, if you say something that turns out to not be exactly true, that can be used against you and probably will.
Prosecutors love to play 911 tapes, especially if they have you saying unkind things about the victim.
After you get through this series of questions and law enforcement and responders are on the way, what about providing care?
I see no problem with it. If anything, it would look great in the eyes of a jury if you are a defendant standing next to me.
Yeah, I think definitely being situationally aware is going to be important. If you're in the middle of CPR or something like that and this guy's buddy comes up behind you and does something to you, that's a problem as well. So not saying don't do it, but certainly keep your head on a swivel during that time. Obviously, scene safety should be primary, I would think.
Absolutely.
So what are some things immediately that we need to be aware of on the scene? And I'll start off by saying the bad guy. What is he doing? Okay, is he down? Does he have friends? Are there other people in the community that are maybe friends of his that are going to come to his aid? What about points of cover, exit points, or maybe well-meaning good Samaritans who have misinterpreted what they've seen and think that you're the bad guy?
And be prepared, because it's 2024. If there are other people around, they're going to come running with cell phones, editorializing what they might be seeing. And be prepared. Do not engage them if at all possible.
Yes. You're going to be on tape for sure.
Yeah.
From the beginning to the very end, you're going to be on tape. So
be careful when they run up to you and say, why did you shoot that man? He wasn't doing anything wrong.
It's just a pillar of the community.
Yes.
Yep.
So all that happens, and now police start to arrive. Hopefully your gun is put away and all of that. what do we want to do when they arrive? I would imagine being cooperative is going to be helpful.
I had one case I just litigated in the city of Baltimore. One of the smartest things he had done, he had just shot an individual. He kept his hands in the air the whole time. The whole neighborhood was out for the shooting. The police were very stressed by the whole situation. And if he had behaved in a manner they perceived as belligerent, he might have been a quote-unquote victim as well from
Right.
the officer responding.
And it's going to be helpful in court, I would
Yes.
imagine. So be cooperative, follow the commands of law enforcement. If they tell you to drop the gun, drop it on the ground. If they tell you to set it down, set it down. But avoid any movements that look like you're swinging the weapon around towards them or anything like that. Remember, they're going to be under high stress too because they don't know who you are. You don't have a sash on that says good guy or victim, right? They have no idea. So follow their commands. And, you know, if you drop the gun and it gets damaged, you can always buy another one, but you've only got one life. So you followed their commands, and now they're going to have probably some questions for you. Really, what the only things that they need to know at that moment is what is necessary for their safety and the safety of the community, i.e., are there more suspects out there, and are they armed? Andrew, thoughts?
Duane, I would agree with you on all that. And obviously, it's going to be a very Maryland-centric audience. Make sure you have your concealed carry permit on you. If you don't, it's not the end of the world. Don't be furtively reaching for it, but present that to them as well. After that, I would really advise being quiet until I show up.
Yes, and I would also add this. If you are the type of person that talks to yourself, do not do that in the back of a police car. Why do you think that's important?
Oh, I have plenty of these cases all wonderfully recorded, them saying all kinds of crazy things, thinking that they're in the back of the paddy wagon by themselves being recorded.
You're
Yes.
never alone.
Yeah, exactly. So be mindful of all of that. So, Andrew, what is the next likely course of event? There's going to be investigators there. They're going to be looking at the scene. They're going to be processing evidence. Arrested. Can you expect to be arrested?
You can expect to be handcuffed. You can expect to be possibly transported down to a station. My advice would be the 5 magic words. I want my lawyer now. Have a lawyer in mind. Call if you have an insurance company that handles this sort of thing. But I would be very careful who you speak with to anyone other than your lawful spouse. And I would really focus on getting an attorney down there to assist you if it's going to even look like it's going to be adversarial or questionable.
And Saller, Lord, Ernsberger, and Inslee handles that type of stuff.
Like 7-Eleven.
Very good. All right. So we answered the will you be arrested? Will my gun be taken away and will I get it back?
You should almost certainly count on your gun being taken into evidence. Will you get it back? Maybe.
Maybe. So you're certainly at the end of the court case, you're entitled to get it back so long as you follow. Well, we assume you should be entitled.
I was going to say,
get it back.
we had to win.
You have to win, but assuming that you win, you should be entitled to receive it back. However, each department will have different processes or paperwork that you may have to complete in order to actually get it back out of property.
Absolutely. And be prepared to undergo a background check and things of that nature before they will return it.
Okay. So after that, court, lawsuits, what does the landscape look like for individuals? Now, they've been involved in the incident. They've called for help. Police have arrived. They followed commands. Maybe they were arrested. Maybe they weren't. Certainly, they were detained while the police is trying to determine what occurred. What does the legal landscape look after that?
If they are charged, they very likely could be charged with murder or attempted murder, and things will get very sticky for a while. You'll probably be 9 months to 18 months before the case will go to trial. We'll pick 12 and good true citizens to hear the evidence, but it's going to be a very involved process. Experts, meetings, lawyers, a lot of money.
So the officers, they're going to be in consultation with the Office of the State's Attorney to determine whether or not you're going to be charged in most cases, right?
Absolutely.
So it's generally going to be the State's Attorney's Office that's going to determine, are we going to move forward, or are we going to have a declination of charges on these people, meaning they're going to decline to charge?
It's going to really depend on the jurisdiction. Some jurisdictions are going to be much more eager to charge you and figure it out on the back end, as unfair as that may be. Others, they may want to conduct a thorough investigation and then potentially charge you.
What kind of timeline do people look at, or are they looking at for a criminal case, like for it from when they're charged to when it gets into court and when it becomes determined or decided?
9 to 18 months.
Okay. All right. And following that, you are likely to also face a civil suit, right?
If the alleged victim feels that you have a dollar and feels that they were wronged, I would certainly be expecting it. You may be covered by your homeowner's insurance. You may be covered by business insurance, or you may be, as we pejoratively say, be naked.
Oh. So would those civil cases come after the criminal case? Do they typically wait until that's adjudicated before they move forward on the civil?
They could file the civil case before the criminal case is resolved, but almost certainly it would be stayed pending the outcome of any criminal prosecution.
Okay. All right. And you said it can be very expensive. Do you have any dollar amounts out there?
50 to 100,000 for each stage.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So mental health, who should you talk to if you're having problems? Certainly there are, when I say mental help, I mean mental help after the fact, after you've been involved in an incident and maybe you're having a negative impact. Certainly there are paid services out there and pastoral counseling and stuff, but do you expose yourself to any potential legal problems or risk by engaging in that type of activity?
You don't expose yourself to legal risk at all by getting help after the fact. All the time I have clients who say, well, won't that make me look guilty? Doesn't work like that. Your bigger concern is you want to make sure whoever you are speaking with, there would be an applicable privilege to prevent the prosecution from compelling them to testify against you. Speaking to your wife, that would be privileged.
Spousal privilege, right?
Yeah. Speaking to your therapist, that would be privileged. Any other doctor or person of that nature, privileged. Speaking to your best friend about it, just because he's been through something similar, not privileged.
Or some random person at your church or something like that.
Absolutely. Be very wary. Whatever you do, do not post about it on social media.
Oh, God, yeah.
I had a large case, and a big part of it was the young man's posting on social media right after it happened.
So no selfies at the scene with the guy behind you.
Please no Snapchats, Instagrams, Reels, Facebook, TikToks, any of that. Please.
All right, understood. So, Vinny, let's talk about some of your incidents, what happened, the aftermath, lessons learned, etc.
Okay, so obviously I've lived in Baltimore City my whole life. So I'll be 40 in June, so call it 40 years. And I lived in a particular part of town for almost a decade that some would call questionable. However, I lived over there for a while, and my first incident that was critical where I had a gun pointed at me by some upstanding citizens. It was in 2016. I was out on a date with a girl. I think it was maybe the second or third time we had been out together. We went out to eat. It was like a Wednesday night or something. Got home around 10:30, and she says, why is this guy following us so close down the street? I said, I don't know. People around here just, whatever. They're weird. So we were looking for a parking spot, and
So you were in your car when he was following you?
we were actually in her car. My car was parked, believe it or not, for living in the city, I had a private driveway. So if you imagine two row houses, imagine one's missing. So that space in between the two houses was made into a private driveway, which I had two big wooden gates that would access it. So you had to open these wooden gates every time you want to get your car in or out. So, but I could fit multiple cars in there because there was the length of the whole house into the backyard. So at the time I said, just go down and just make a U-turn. And if you can't find a spot to parallel park in, then I'll go through the trouble of opening the gate. I got to start my car up, pull it up, and you can come in behind me. So as we're trying to make the U-turn, because it was a dead end street at the bottom, so we're trying to make the U-turn, this person is awfully close to us in this SUV, but we were able to wiggle around.
What kind of car were you in?
She had this little, it was one of those little Scion FRSs.
Okay.
It's like the
Was it? Was it a newer model?
Yeah,
or,
it was a little sports car.
Okay.
Little sporty car. Subaru made a version of it too called the BRZ. They were like the same thing, except Scion called it an FRS and Subaru called it a BRZ.
We know so many people that get flashy new cars and they don't consider the kind of attention that it can bring.
Correct. So I don't know. I think we must have picked them up somewhere as like a tail. So as we made the U-turn, we were able to wiggle past them. They were in like a Acura MDX SUV. So we went up and I said, just pull in the cutout in the curb. I'll get out and open the gates. So I got out, went to open the gates, and I noticed the SUV had made a U-turn as well, and he was speeding back up the street. So he's coming pretty fast, and I'm pretty situational. I got good awareness about what's going on, and you can hear a vehicle coming fast on a city street. So I'm like, who's driving up the street like that? So I stop, and he had my attention. So he buzzes past, but I see the brake lights come on like at the top of the street. So I go in, I start my car, I'd put it in drive, and I pull it up. And I'm watching in the mirror. I see him walking down past my driveway. So they walked past completely the first time.
How many people was it?
It was 3. So my spidey senses are already going off. I'm like, all right, something's kind of weird here. So I'm hanging in my car for a second. I got it in reverse. So I'm like, if they come in the driveway, everybody's getting ran over.
Right.
And so
you had a plan.
I had a plan. And then I was like, I waited. I was like, all right, maybe another 5 seconds went by. And I was like, all right, well, the guy down the street, he kind of looks like he hangs out. He had some questionable people come by every once in a while. I was like, maybe they're friends of his. All right, maybe whatever. So I pull the car up, put it in park, shut it off, and I get out. As I'm getting out, they walk back past. And I'm like, here we go. I'm like, something's definitely wrong. And I'm trying to look at my girlfriend who's still sitting in her car. And I almost wanted to say, like, just get out of here. Like, go. But she wouldn't have been able to process without. She was like from Rhode Island. She probably never even seen a gun in her life. So my gate was open, like swung out onto the sidewalk. So I had no line of vision on them. They were on the other side of the gate. So I picked up a red brick. There was a stack of bricks in the driveway. And I was like, well, if they don't have guns, they're going to have a really good fight on their hands because I'm going to smash one of them with this brick. So as I'm coming around the gate, they're coming around too. They already got the guns out. I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll just drop this brick now. And at first, it never occurred to me that they wanted to take the cars. So I'm thinking, all right, it's just a regular street robbery. Here's my wallet, whatever, take my cell phone. And then their driver backed the MDX up and he's like, get the cars. And I was like, oh, fuck. Like,
so there were 3 on the street
and one in the car. Correct.
What?
So
4 bad guys in total.
4 bad guys. And that's what they make high capacity magazines for.
Standard capacity, sir.
Yes.
Standard.
Yes.
So whatever, we got our cars taken. They took our cell phones, they took our cars, they took our keys. So I'm locked out of my house. I have no car, no cell phone, nothing. So yeah, that was quite the experience. That was the first time.
Let me just ask a couple follow-up questions.
Sure.
What did you do then?
What did I do? A neighbor called the police for me.
How helpful were they?
The police?
Yes.
Not very. So it turns out I think they found her car before mine. But the crazy part about my car was I had the gas light on, like, so it was very close to fumes, and
you were doing well, living high times.
Well, I just there's really not a whole lot of gas stations in the city, so for me to get gas, I really have to go out of my way to go get gas. So, and I was like, I drive 3/4 of a mile to work. 5 minutes after I hang up with the insurance adjuster, the police call me and say, we just found your car. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Literally, this thing had been gone for 30 days, but they parked it that night because it still had the gas light on when I got
So, I mean, that's like a security feature, right?
Yeah. I mean, you just...
So if you live in the city, leave it on empty.
Yeah,
They won't get far if they get your car.
Yeah. So that was the first one. And So
What was the condition of your car when they returned it?
honestly, you can tell they might have played bumper cars with it. Like the front bumper had a crack in it, and I think the front left tire was like low on air. But obviously, I didn't have a key for it. They took the only key I had for that car. So, and it was one of those, push to start. So it was the fob. So I think I had to pay like $400. But insurance paid for the car. They were like, we don't want to risk, this car having an abundance of problems. So we're going to still total loss it, because I said I haven't even heard the engine run. I don't know if it runs. And
they had your house keys too. So did you have to rekey your house too?
I did. I rekeyed the house. Had to do the whole Home Depot dash the next day. But more importantly, I was stuck with this girl because she has no family here. Like, and
No longer has a car. Welcome to Baltimore.
so it was like we had to scratch each other's back because she's the only one that had a cell phone because she had her work phone. But they took her personal phone. They took my personal phone. So she had the cell phone and I had the vehicle.
Vinny, you're a very situationally aware person in knowing you already. But did that change you in any way? Did that make you look at things differently or be more observant?
Oh yeah. Actually, it made me paranoid. Honestly, it took me probably almost a whole year, because after that, I would get out, and before I would like turn my back to open those gates to get my car in or out, I would check up and down the street. I had a habit. I would drive the whole length of the block, go down and turn around just to see if there was somebody coming like a block away. I'm like, all right, I got enough time to get the car in before they're on top of me. You know what I mean? I would just gauge stuff like that. I was maybe a little overzealous, but you can't be too safe in the city. And then I always made another rule. I always back the car in after that. And I tell everybody, if you have a parking garage or anything at home, back into your spaces, and you do not shut the engine off until the door is completely shut. Because if someone slides under that door, trips that laser, or comes in front of you, you need to be able to put that thing in drive and run them over.
A very
If the situation warrants, yeah, absolutely.
And that's just like, that was positive habits that I came up with after that. But more importantly, I got a concealed carry permit. So
I was going to ask the final question with this first incident. What, if anything, could you have done differently under the conditions at the time?
I don't know. So I had so much to process so quickly, but it's crazy how much information your brain can actually process, and that when you look back and realize it was a very short amount of time, and I'm talking seconds, but you literally run through a bunch of crazy scenarios in your head. But one that grabbed my attention and made me stop was, I have another life to preserve here. Because if I do something crazy and I end up getting shot, they're not going to leave her as a witness.
Right.
She's going to.
Right.
So
Discretion is sometimes definitely the better course of action.
yeah, I mean, listen, when there's 4 people there, there's 2 of them at least with guns, and you're standing there with a brick, you're probably going to lose that fight. So yeah, that was it. Whatever. I learned a lot from it. But you just have to be situationally aware. It doesn't matter where you're at, because so many people, they just get complacent with, it just can't happen to me.
Right.
Backing in is such good advice.
It is.
In the counties, there was that horrific home invasion where they had followed the guy home, and while he was in the garage, they got in after him, got him, his wife.
It's awful.
Horrible, because he didn't follow Vinny's rule of backing in.
I back in everywhere. I don't give a, pardon my French, I don't give a shit. The way you look at me at Sam's Club, Walmart, whatever, I'm going to back that big in the parking spot, because I always want my eyes in front of me.
That's good sound advice. And so after that incident, you got a concealed carry permit. You actually came through Urban Defense for the training.
You were my very first concealed carry instructor.
And so then you had another incident occur later on.
Yeah, it was you can't make this up, but I was living in the same place, almost identical scenario. I was dating a different girl at the time, my actual current girlfriend now. But ironically enough, we were coming from the same exact restaurant that I was coming from in 2016 when the guys carjacked us.
I will never be going there to eat now.
No, I will
You
never
can
go
you can
there.
tell us off air who that is or where that's at, so I won't go there either.
Yeah, I'll just let you know it's a sushi restaurant in Baltimore, but
Okay.
I won't tell you the name.
Okay.
So my girlfriend's like, you never want to get sushi anymore. I'm like, I think you know why.
3 times makes a trend.
She's like, every time I eat sushi, I end up with a handgun pointed at me. So
As opposed to E. coli.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you take your choice.
So the second incident was it was 4th of July 2022, and I had some guys out working for my company. Obviously, 4th of July, it's a heavy security night, and living on the side of town that I did, we had to drive through the inner harbor to get to a lot of the sites that my people were working. So we decided to take our bicycles, because at the time it was actually faster to ride a bicycle anywhere in the city than it was to drive. So we got on our bicycles. I think we set out around 8 p.m. and went and checked on a couple guys down around the Fells Point area. And then on the way back, I said, hey, would you like to stop and get something to eat? And she suggested sushi. So we went to that sushi place. And this is just as the fireworks had started at the harbor. So we had our sushi, got back on the bikes. I think we got back home around 10:30. And as we both had our bicycles to go up the steps into the front of the building, there was a big dog park across the street from our house, but the lights hadn't worked for quite some time. So it was very dark over there at night.
Did you let Mayor Scott know?
Yeah.
Send an email.
Yeah. I put in a 311 ticket, but
Because those always work.
yeah, they definitely do. And so it was a scary park at night. I mean, I used to catch people pulling door handles because they couldn't even see me standing in that park at night. I would take my dog over there late night. So that park is there. It's at our backs. And as we're going up the steps, I see something in my peripheral, and at the same time, God bless my girlfriend, she goes, "Whoa." So I turn and I look, and here comes a nice gentleman with a T-shirt wrapped around his head, and he's like,
A COVID mask.
yeah, it was more like
The Baltimore COVID mask.
yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now I'm tracking. Okay.
So he had this what looked to me as a big revolver, a very large revolver, and he was pointing it at us as he was walking across the street, and he was going, "Don't move, don't move." And fortunately, like I said, you go in kind of that bullet time. It's like things just slow down, and you start processing information, and you start processing what's happening, and you just have to go full send. And that's what I said, obviously I measured the situation. I said, this guy, he's still at the double yellow lines. He's standing in the middle of the street.
So how close do you think he is?
15 feet, maybe.
All right. So 7 yards ish.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and he's
He's within range.
Oh yeah, and he's advancing. He's walking to us. His whole idea, he would have walked in between the cars. So obviously it's a city street, so there's cars completely parallel parked up and down. So I said, you know what? I said, this guy, I have space, and space buys me time, and I have cover. I said, I have cover. He has nothing. He's standing in the middle of the street, and I have all these cars here. So I was able to drop my bicycle, took a hard step to the right down off of the step, and in one motion, I drew my firearm.
What were you carrying?
At the time, it was a Smith & Wesson M&P Shield 9, Hornady Critical Defense. So I was able to get the weapon out as I was moving for cover, and I stepped off of his target because, he had the weapon pointed at me. Obviously, I'm the man, I'm the threat. So I stepped off of his, target and got my weapon.
So you got off the X.
Yeah, I got off the X. Get off the X. And I was able to get a clean shot over. My first shot out was over the bed of the truck directly at him. We're still trying to figure out if it hit him or not. But my next move was to keep moving to the front of the truck. And when I moved to the front of the truck, he was kind of at the tail light on the driver's side of the truck. So we were getting ready to do the round and round. So I could see him through the front and back windshield of this old pickup truck. So I lined them up in the sights, and I let 2 more go through the windshield, out the back glass, at him. And that just about that time, I thought to myself, I said, why is he not shooting back at me?
Right.
I was like, I don't hear any other fire. I'm like, I'm waiting for a gunfight.
It was all a big misunderstanding, and he was just there to share the word of Jesus Christ.
Right, I'm sure.
But really what happened the whole time is that after I put that first shot on him, he froze because he was just obviously not expecting it.
Hey, he had not gone through the urban defense training, I think.
Well, and stress goes both ways. It's a sword that cuts both sides. In fact, we did our one of our force on force reality-based training classes just this morning, and people were talking about how things seem to move in slow motion during the scenarios. They talk about how the stress feels different than stress that they felt in other ways.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I explained to them is it's not just you that's going to be under stress. It's also the bad guy that's going to be under stress. So in this situation, he wasn't expecting what was coming.
No.
So
That's the problem is a lot of these guys, they're so comfortable doing this because they've done it to 20, 30, maybe even 40 people.
and maybe never had anyone fight back.
Never had a path of resistance, or at least a small ounce of resistance, because most criminals will look for a soft target. So, and I guess that for some reason that night, it was like, hey, look at these 2 people on bicycles. You probably thought we were college kids or something, because my neighborhood was actually known for having nursing and college students in it, because we lived across the street from the University of Maryland. So,
Are you insinuating that college students might be soft targets?
oh my God, they're so bad. I used to watch them.
They're
every
really
day.
good at camping, though, as of recently.
Yes,
as you've
yes.
seen.
I used to see them all the time, and they're like walking with their MacBook under their arm, AirPods in, cell phone in the other hand. And I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, you're a piece of steak in the lion's den right now.
Asking for it.
Yeah.
They're asking for it, and they're not situationally aware.
They're
And
not.
It's like you don't know what you don't know until you know it, and until you experience it.
And what a compliment, Vinny. They think you're a young college co-ed there, you and your girlfriend.
There you go.
Yeah. So back to the story. After I discharged the 3rd round, I was like, I don't hear this guy shooting back. He's not returning fire, because my next move was to come around in front of that truck, and I was going to mag dump him. And just,
Did you have a second magazine if you did that?
I did not.
Always have a second magazine.
I did not. But
Well, I was going to think too. You were talking about shooting through the vehicle, and auto glass bullets don't like auto glass.
no, because it deflects their
well,
trajectory.
but safety glass tends to do a really good job of breaking bullets up and killing their velocity. So even though you were getting penetration, you said through the windshield, out the back window, right?
It's actually interesting because I managed to stick 2 rounds through the same hole of the front windshield, but I had 2 different exit wounds on the back glass, because I was literally that's how hard I was tracing him,
Right.
through
Got it.
to take him out. Like I wanted to take this guy out, because I was fully ready for him to be returning fire at me.
And it should be noted, I mean, deadly force is obviously warranted in this situation. It's not a question.
I still am suspect. He may have been there to minister to Mr. Noto.
He could, maybe he was trying to show you the gun. He
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
bought it, and he was very proud of it, and he wanted to show it to you.
He said, have you heard about the word of the Lord?
I'm going to show him to you,
Yeah,
sir. Hold on.
yeah.
I'm going to introduce you to the Lord, right?
So yeah,
And he had his COVID mask on. He didn't want you to get.
yeah, he
wa-
was practicing the governor's mandates.
There you go.
wanted social
And,
distancing. I understand.
No, he obviously at that point I disengaged because he was retreating. I realized at that point he was retreating, and he retreated so hard that he had dropped his weapon in the middle of the street. Like, this guy literally just shit his pants. Like, it looked like his arm was kind of hanging, so I'm not sure if my first round clipped him in the shoulder, but from what the detectives told me, they were like, if he doesn't say where he got shot, like, we can't ever pin him to you. They said we get walk-in shootings at least 3 or 4 a night. So I kind of looked around and I was like, I looked at my girlfriend and I told her, I said, just go ahead and call the police. Cause I was like, I still had my weapon in my hand at the time. And I was like, is there anybody else? Is there anyone else coming? And then just as I'm thinking about this stuff, a guy on a dirt bike comes down the street. And I'm like, so like you were talking about earlier, I was like, is he with him? There's so many people that like, they get that tunnel vision and you can't have that.
Yeah, so you got to be situationally aware.
Yeah.
And again, that's why we talk about scanning, doing your 360 check, because threats can come from anywhere. And it's just very important that you're aware of your environment for these reasons. So the guy on the bike, just some random...
He was just a random kid riding an illegal dirt bike. And
That's unheard of within the confines of the city
I've
of
never
Baltimore.
seen such a thing.
No.
Usually they're in packs of like 50. A single one?
well, that's what was so bizarre to me too, because I'm like, it's very rare that guys are out pulling armed robberies by themselves,
Yeah.
especially in Baltimore. If you've any clip of an armed robbery or any kind of strong arm robbery that you've ever seen from Baltimore City, it's usually at least 2 people. So I was fully anticipating that there was somebody else somewhere. So from what the detectives ended up telling me was that this guy had been hitting people around the neighborhood for quite some time. They were like, yep. They said he always had a revolver. So that was him. But he found the right guy eventually.
Yeah. So he finally ran into the wrong guy.
Yeah.
So what happened afterwards with the investigation? How long were you tied up with law enforcement, all that?
Well, I was actually surprised because I'm not sure what the city's protocol is, but when the first officer responded, he didn't even seem to know that I was the one that discharged my firearm, because he got out and he was just all casual and he walked up and he said, "Hey, what's going on?" And I said, a gentleman just tried to rob me and my girlfriend at gunpoint, and I said I discharged my firearm, and he says, "Whoa," he says, "You discharged your firearm?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "Well, where is it?" I said, "It's back in the holster right here on my waist, sir." And he goes, "Okay, well, just take it out and unload it for me."
Oh. So
said,
yeah,
okay.
we want to try to avoid that sort of thing,
Yeah.
obviously. So okay, all right. So then what happened?
So I unloaded it. I sat it on the hood of my neighbor's truck, whose windows I just shot out, and then I called him and I said, "Hey, Fred." He's like, "Hey, man, what's going on?" I said, "Hate to be the bearer of bad news." I said, "I just shot the windows out of your truck. A guy tried to rob me." I said, "But don't worry, I'll take care of it." He says, "All right." So he comes down, and then there used to be these 2 alcoholics that lived below me, and one actually was an attorney. It's pretty funny.
I've never heard of something like that.
Yeah.
Disgusting.
So he comes out and he's shit-faced and he's like, "Don't say anything to the police. Don't do this." And he's like, "Put this money in your sock in case they take you to jail." And I'm like, "Peter, I got it."
Make sure you got your white boxers on too
Yeah,
for when
yeah.
you end up at central booking.
And I left out the part where I picked up I picked his weapon up out of the street.
So you picked it up with your hand?
I did.
Okay.
Which was that was wrong of me. I know you're not supposed to touch the weapon, but essentially, I didn't want him coming back for it, and B, I wanted to get it out of the middle of the street so it didn't get ran over, because the hammer was pulled back on it. Maybe a vehicle running it over could have discharged it,
Okay, all right. I guess that's reasonable.
So-
Discharged it, destroyed it.
Yeah.
Someone. What I always say: no 2 scenes are ever the same.
and the number of situations are infinite. So you can't say that there's always one hard and fast rule in every single situation. So okay,
No.
that's reasonable,
Yeah.
I guess.
It's more,
yeah.
it's more important you have that weapon if you need to bolster your story. Than,
No, that was like my goal. That was going to be my lifesaver. I'm a guy that just hammered off 3 rounds on the middle of the city street, shot my neighbor's windows out. Of course, I wanted that weapon because I wanted to prove that I wasn't crazy and just making it up. So, but at the same time, I got a kid that just rode down the street on a dirt bike. What happens if you crash a dirt bike in the hood? Somebody else comes out and jumps on it and grabs it while you're laying there hurt. What happens if they see a gun laying there? They're just going to grab it and run off with it. It's a free gun.
So the suspect he ran
ran.
away.
He
ran
ran.
away.
He ran.
All right. And so the officers show up. They finally realize you had discharged your firearm.
Mm-hmm.
They have you disarm yourself so to make the scene safe, and they do their investigation. So then what happened after that? What did the rest of your evening look like?
So Um,
And bear in mind, this is July 4th.
This is July 4th.
Not a lot's going on in the city that
what's-
night.
Yeah. So what was crazy is not one neighbor came out of their house because there was fireworks going off. So many people in the city shoot off fireworks, and it was just constant booming and banging. Anyway, it turns into full CSI after that. Detectives show up. They tape the street off. They got forensics out there. They're taking pictures of the bullet holes. They're picking up shell casings. They're processing it as a shooting. And I'm sitting on the steps, and I got a hold of Andrew eventually. And,
Good call.
and he said, just tell him what happened. And if at any point you feel like it's going to go sideways, you can shut down. And I said, okay. So I took the advice. But the main thing that's important is I wasn't standing there with an empty gun and 15 rounds, 15 shell casings all over the street. There wasn't 6 cars with bullet holes in them. I didn't overdo it. I used the proper amount of force to stop the threat.
That's a win. That's a win. Again, whether or not the suspect remains at the scene because he went down or whatever,
Yeah.
the goal is to stop the threat. That's your mission, to use force, to defend and then disengage. That's a W. That's a win.
No bullet holes in you. No bullet holes in your
No
girlfriend.
bullet holes in me. No bullet holes in my girlfriend. And it was funny because the detective was like, you're like the first person we've ever seen that actually has the right stuff to carry a handgun.
Meaning the permit.
Yes, the
Everybody
permit.
else just like Doc Holliday.
Yeah, and he said he's like, don't sweat it, man. He's like, we're not coming after you. He's like, you did nothing wrong. He was like, so they were actually very, very cool.
Were you
about
ever
it.
placed in handcuffs?
No.
And you were never taken down to the police station?
I was not.
They took your information. Did they take your gun, obviously?
They did. They did take my gun, and they still have it. Mr. Saller, if you'd like to make a phone call for me. It's been what, 2 years?
Give me the information. We'll get back.
That gun is probably melted down by now, but it could still be in property, and certainly you should have the right to request it back.
Well, what's funny is I made a joke to my girlfriend. I said, we should have just let him rob us. And she says, why would you say that? I said, because I lost a $500 gun. And my neighbor's truck was like a 93 Ford Ranger. I'm thinking I can get windows put in this thing for like $200. Hell no, it was $500. Cost me $1,000. $1,000 that shooting cost me.
On the flip side of that, of course, is if he was really serious, and it turned out to be a BB gun.
Correct.
Yeah.
It was a pellet gun.
So, but you didn't know that at the time.
No.
That's immaterial. It was in your mind. You were in fear of serious bodily injury or death.
There wasn't an orange cap at the end.
No, there was not. Actually, I have a picture of it, Duane. I'll send it to you if you want to pop it up on the screen. when we
Absolutely.
put this up.
Absolutely, I can do that. And so the other side of the coin is this: sometimes maybe you comply and you're fine, and sometimes they don't want to leave witnesses. And you can't. We don't want to play the game of what if,
No,
right?
no.
So what if I'd have done this? Maybe they'd have just left, and I wouldn't have had, or maybe they would have just executed you both. You don't know, and you'll never know.
No, because like you said, you can't tell what's going through their mind. You don't even know the reason they're there. Like I said, I thought the first guys just wanted my wallet. No, they wanted the cars too. You know what I mean? And you don't think of that. You don't think that the person's there to harm you. You're like, well, I'm just getting robbed. You know what I mean?
And you don't, yeah. So we're not in the game of playing what if, and we
No.
talked about that this morning in our reality based training course, Force on Force. You don't know what their intentions are, and again, people are just crazy. Some people, so you don't know what they're going to do. So
Nope.
so you're getting questioned. Law enforcement, sounds like it was a fairly positive encounter with law enforcement.
It was. All the officers that responded, I think it ended up being somewhere around 4 or 5 uniformed officers, and then I think it was like 2 detectives. Citywide shooting came out, but all in all, they ended up writing it as a aggravated assault by pointing
Okay.
because there was no victim.
Okay. All right.
So it got wrote as an ag assault by pointing.
If you had to do it all over again, what, if anything, would you have done differently?
Not a damn thing. Not a damn thing, because honestly, it's like I try and tell people, because especially with the way that they're, shall issue now, everybody has a carry permit, and there's so much bad information out there on the internet.
You don't say. Everything on the internet I read isn't true. That's Urban Defense Podcast law too.
It's any
The internet's everything on the internet's all true.
Yes.
So my biggest advice to anyone who carries a gun is make sure it's always on you, because you're going to get these little stupid ads on Instagram for these cool little magnetic holders on your dashboard.
Yes, I've seen those.
And you're going to get all these stupid people to try and sell you these different ways to carry your handgun. And like my buddies are like, oh, well, mine's always in my center console. I said, so what about when you're pumping gas?
Or what about when they rip you out of the car and start beating your face into the
Correct.
concrete? Where's your gun now?
Correct. And it's just always keep the weapon on you, but more important than actually knowing how to fire the weapon and taking your 16-hour training class, which I would highly recommend that you pick someone as thorough as Duane. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on his podcast. I'm saying that because he was my very first CCW instructor, and he obviously has a law enforcement background. We're all versed in law here, and I've seen some really bad, shitty instructors that will literally sign your certificate for $150.
That abounds. It is all over the place, and they have people that will sign people's papers without even having them shoot and qualify, which, by the way, is illegal.
No one's gone to federal prison for that lately.
Oh no, not
I can't
at
think
all.
of any.
Not at all. Someone that we've all heard of. You know,
little beer money.
Yeah.
Give me a little beer money.
You're absolutely right, and there is so much bad stuff out there, and some of it is because people don't know any better, and they're well-meaning, but they just don't have the training, knowledge, experience, and background to teach, quote, what they're teaching.
Yeah.
And then there are other folks, that other percentage out there that I like to refer to as the opportunists. These are people that puff up their background.
Yes.
They're really good at marketing, and they are interested in taking your money, and they will look good and sound good doing it. And the problem is what you're getting isn't what you think you're getting.
No.
You know, I'm as pro Second Amendment as they come, but I'm pro responsibility.
Yeah.
And I believe your rights end where mine begin. You do what you do, so long as what you're doing doesn't interfere with me or what I'm doing.
100%.
And there's a lot of bad information, misinformation, all kind of that stuff out there. And it's a shame. I'm not really sure what the answer is. You know, people look at these classes that are being taught out of somebody's basement for $50. And they think with dollars and not with cents, if you get where I'm going.
I just heard of one of those instructors that told someone you cannot carry over 10 rounds in Maryland.
I heard that. That was posted on Maryland Gun Owners. I also had and we talked about it this morning in the class, probably 6 months to a year ago. There was an individual in one of our classes, and he had told me, we were talking about use of deadly force with a blunt force object, like a bat or a crowbar or something like that. And he told me and the rest of the class that his instructor previous had told him that if the other person doesn't have a gun, forget about shooting them at all or you're going to prison. And I said, wait a minute, where are we going with this? And he said, no, the instructor said that it has to be proportional. I said, so hold on now. What you're saying is, now this is probably taking that necessary, reasonable, and proportional stuff that we've heard about in the law enforcement realm to another extreme. And I said to him, I said, so what you're essentially saying is if an individual attacks me with a bat and I don't have a bat, I have to say, hold on, sir, and go to the local Walmart and buy a bat so I can do some sort of sword fight with this guy. And I tell people, I say, look, it is not the mechanism of force that has to be proportional. It's the level of force. If we're at a non-deadly force altercation, then that's where it's at. If the level of force is raised up because of some sort of exacerbating factor up to deadly force, and he has a knife or a bat or a pipe or whatever, and I have a gun, good for me. So Andrew, some final thoughts on tonight, some free legal advice to the listeners?
Remember, if you're in a deadly force encounter, if you are justified, you have nothing to fear in the long term, and so long as you don't ruin it for yourself. Vinny, you've all heard him. He's a very articulate, controlled, sensible man. At no point, Vinny, were you attacking the victim and saying derogatory things.
No, the suspect.
Yes.
The suspect.
At no point were you disrespectful to the law enforcement officers. You weren't trying to litigate your case right then and there.
No.
You called for professional help, spoke with me at the time. you did everything correctly, and you
Yeah.
had no good options other than the one you had to take. It was the least bad option.
Well, Vinny, I want to thank you for being here with us tonight and sharing your experiences and thoughts on the matter. I definitely hope you'll join us again
Absolutely.
for future podcasts. So as we wrap up, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Please remember to comment, share, like, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell to be notified of new content. We're dropping new content all the time. And of course, always stay tuned for our next episode. So for the Urban Defense Podcast, I'm Duane Urban, along with Andrew Saller and Vinny Noto. Remember, knowledge is mental ammunition, and train, fight, and win.